It was 9:15 a.m., a typical Wednesday morning, on Waterloo Bridge, London. The year was 1978, and the bridge was swarming with commuters rushing to get to work. A faint screeching sound echoed through the air as a taxi door slammed shut. Georgi Markov, a prominent Bulgarian dissident, had just stepped off the taxi, his eyes fixed on the busy street ahead. He took a deep breath, unaware of the sinister fate that awaited him. Waterloo Bridge comes alive with a kaleidoscope of colors and sounds, but this morning was about to take a dark turn. The city streets, just a moment ago, seemed so vibrant and alive, filled with people rushing to start their day. Markov's presence among them was as ordinary as the morning fog, yet his life was on the cusp of a tragic turn. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers, while the distant hum of traffic grew louder, a stark contrast to the impending doom that had just unfolded. It was a scene that seemed perfectly ordinary, until the sound of a screeching tire pierced the air. Georgi Markov stood around 160 centimeters tall, with a slender build, his eyes fixed on the ground as he waited to cross the bridge. He wore a simple yet elegant suit, a stark contrast to the cold calculation of the person who was about to change his life forever. Markov's calm and collected demeanor gave no indication of the danger lurking nearby. The person responsible for this dastardly act, however, remained concealed, their intentions shrouded in mystery. As the moments ticked by, this seemingly ordinary man was about to become the victim of a ruthless assassination. Passers-by began to notice a commotion around Markov, their instincts warning them something was amiss. Some heard a faint hissing sound, while others noticed a small, metallic object lying on the ground. A nearby cyclist stopped to investigate the scene, their curiosity getting the better of them. Markov's condition seemed to deteriorate rapidly as he stumbled and fell to the ground, his body writhing in agony. Panic began to set in as onlookers realized something was terribly wrong. Before we go further, hit subscribe and the bell. We post new cases every single day. From the bustling streets of London to the sinister world of espionage, you're about to enter a world of intrigue and deception. Each case we explore will keep you guessing until the very end. So, let's begin this journey into the dark side of human nature, shall we? Let me take you back to the very beginning of this story. Georgi Markov was born on March 1, 1929, in Bulgaria, a country still reeling from the effects of World War II. As a young man, Markov grew increasingly disillusioned with the communist regime that ruled his homeland. He began to write scathing critiques of the government, his words fueling a wave of dissent among the Bulgarian people. When he made the bold decision to defect to the West, Markov found himself at the forefront of a fierce battle against oppression. As Markov settled into his new life in London, he continued to write and speak out against the Bulgarian government, his words broadcasted across the globe. He worked tirelessly to expose the regime's atrocities, using his platform to bring attention to the suffering of the Bulgarian people. Markov's courage and conviction earned him a reputation as a vocal dissident, but they also made him a target for those who sought to silence him. The question is, who was behind the sinister plot that would eventually claim his life? Georgi Markov was the central person in this case, a Bulgarian dissident writer, born on March 1, 1929, in a Sofia neighborhood called Nyazevo, at the age of 32, when the events of his life took a drastic turn, in a city that would later become his adopted home, London. Georgi was a native of Bulgaria, the People's Republic of Bulgaria, to be precise, where he worked as a novelist, screenwriter, and playwright until his defection in 1969. The year was significant as it marked a turning point in his life, when he decided to leave behind the only home he knew. He was now in his late 30s, a relatively young man with a promising career ahead, but little did he know that his decision would spark a chain of events that would lead to his untimely demise. His life was about to take a drastic turn, one that would change the course of history forever. Georgi Markov's daily life was marked by a sense of purpose, driven by his passion for writing and his desire to express himself freely. He was a broadcaster, a journalist, and a writer for the BBC World Service, Radio Free Europe, and West Germany's Deutsche Welle, using these platforms to conduct a campaign of sarcastic criticism against the Bulgarian Soviet regime. Markov used his platform to speak out against the injustices he had witnessed, his words laced with a subtle yet biting wit that left his detractors wanting. He was a man of wit and intelligence, with a sharp tongue that cut through the propaganda and misinformation that was so prevalent in Eastern Europe at the time. As he traveled through the city, he often walked with a certain air of confidence, a sense of purpose that was unmistakable to those who knew him. What made Georgi Markov likable and relatable was his passion for his craft, his unwavering commitment to his beliefs, and his willingness to speak truth to power, even when it was unpopular. He was a man who had been driven by a desire for freedom, a longing to express himself without fear of reprisal or recrimination. His words were laced with a sense of irony and sarcasm, a clever blend of wit and wisdom that left his audience in stitches. He was a man of wit and intelligence, with a quick mind and a sharp tongue that left his detractors wanting. Markov's charisma and wit made him a favorite among his colleagues and friends, who admired his courage and convictions. Georgi Markov's relationships were built on trust, with a small circle of friends and colleagues who knew him well. He was married to Annabel Markov, a woman who would later recall her husband's words with precision and clarity. His friends and colleagues at the BBC would also remember him fondly, recalling his wit and intelligence with a sense of nostalgia. Markov's relationships were built on a foundation of trust, with a small circle of friends and colleagues who knew him well. He was a man who valued loyalty and friendship above all else, and those who knew him well would attest to his unwavering commitment to his loved ones. As the months leading up to the incident unfolded, Markov's words became increasingly biting and sarcastic, laced with a sense of irony and wit that left his detractors wanting. He was a man who was gaining traction, his words resonating with a wider audience as he spoke out against the injustices he had witnessed. Markov's words were laced with a sense of urgency, a growing sense that something was amiss, that the writing was on the wall. He was a man who knew his time was limited, that his words would not be silenced for much longer. Markov's words were a warning, a message to the powers that be that he would not be silenced. Markov began to notice a change in the way he was being followed, a sense of unease that he had never experienced before. He was a man who had lived in fear of the authorities, but he had never thought that he would be a target, that his life would be in danger. Markov had always been careful, always mindful of his surroundings, but he had never thought that he would be in danger. He was a man who had always relied on his quick wit and sharp tongue to get him out of sticky situations, but he knew that this was something different. Markov was being stalked, and he knew it. Markov's friends and colleagues began to notice a change in his behavior, a sense of unease that he had never experienced before. They would recall his words, his tone, and his mood, all of which were laced with a sense of urgency. Markov's colleagues at the BBC would remember him as a man who was always on edge, always looking over his shoulder, as if he was waiting for something to happen. He was a man who was living in fear, but he was trying to stay one step ahead of his pursuers. Markov was a master of disguise, a man who could blend into his surroundings with ease, but he knew that this was something different. He was being hunted, and he knew it. Markov's death was a shocking event, one that would leave the world in shock. He was a man who had been stalked for months, a man who had been hiding in plain sight, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But on that fateful day, he was caught off guard, a victim of a cleverly crafted plot that had been in the making for months. Markov's death was a wake-up call, a reminder to the world that the Bulgarian Secret Service was not to be underestimated. And as the world mourned the loss of a great writer and a passionate dissident, one question remained: who was behind his murder, and what was the motive? It was a typical London afternoon on September 7, 1978, at around 2:50 p.m., the sun peeking through the grey skies, a gentle breeze blowing down Waterloo Bridge. Georgi Markov was walking home from a friend's house in the Westminster area, enjoying the warm temperatures, after months of rainy days. The streets were moderately crowded, with people heading back from lunch breaks or hurrying to meet friends. Markov was walking at a relaxed pace, lost in thought, not noticing the man behind him. He was dressed in his usual attire, a suit and tie, reflecting his professional status as a broadcaster for the BBC. Georgi Markov had been living in London for nearly a decade, his career flourishing as a novelist, screenwriter, and playwright. He had made a name for himself as a vocal critic of the Bulgarian Soviet regime, using his writing as a means of expressing his dissent. His latest series of broadcasts for the BBC had garnered significant attention, sparking controversy among Bulgarian diplomats and intelligence agents. As a result, Markov's life was under constant surveillance, his every move monitored by the Bulgarian Secret Service. His outspoken views had made him an enemy of the state, and the regime was desperate to silence him. Now, let's piece together the events of that fateful day, the events that would lead to Markov's tragic demise. A man, later identified as Francesco Galino, was spotted lingering behind Markov on Waterloo Bridge. As Markov paused to cross the road, Galino appeared to be trying to get his attention. Markov, feeling a sudden jab in his leg, looked around and saw a man behind him, who quickly apologized and dropped an umbrella. But what Markov's wife would later reveal is that the jab wasn't from the umbrella, but from a poison pellet, delivered by Galino. The details of this sequence of events are crucial in unraveling the mystery surrounding Markov's assassination. Here's the most shocking detail of the crime, a fact that will leave you stunned: the assassin used a specially crafted umbrella to deliver the poison pellet to Markov's leg. The pellet, believed to contain ricin, was inserted into the umbrella's tip, and it was wielded by Galino, a seemingly innocent bystander. It's a brazen and audacious crime, one that would go down in history as a textbook example of espionage and assassination. This single detail has haunted investigators and theorists for decades, sparking a flurry of conspiracy theories. Markov's case is a grim reminder that even in the heart of a democratic city like London, the dark arts of espionage and state-sponsored terrorism can still thrive. The first person to discover Markov's lifeless body was a passerby, who reported the incident to the authorities. The details of Markov's final moments are still shrouded in mystery, but what is clear is that his death was a cold, calculated murder, perpetrated by a state-sponsored agent. As we delve deeper into the investigation, we'll uncover the intricate web of espionage and deceit that led to Markov's assassination. But for now, let's ask you, the viewer, comment below, what do you think really happened here? Did Markov stumble into a chance encounter with his assassin, or was this a premeditated killing? Share your theories with us, and we'll explore them further in the next part of our investigation. As the investigation unfolds, it becomes clear that Markov's assassination was just the tip of the iceberg, a symptom of a larger problem: the pervasive influence of Soviet and Bulgarian intelligence services on British soil. We'll reveal the shocking connections between Markov's murder and the KGB, and we'll examine the extent of their involvement in the crime. But for now, let's leave you with a cliffhanger, a tantalizing hint at the sinister forces that lurked in the shadows, waiting to strike. Stay tuned for the next part of our investigation, where we'll delve into the dark world of espionage and uncover the truth behind Georgi Markov's tragic demise. The investigation into Georgi Markov's tragic assassination began on September 7, 1978, when a BBC reporter received a phone call from an unknown source claiming that a man had been stabbed with an umbrella in Waterloo Station. Markov was rushed to hospital but unfortunately did not survive. The police were called immediately, and officers from the Metropolitan Police Service were dispatched to the scene. They began canvassing the area, interviewing witnesses, and reviewing CCTV footage.